My children avoid me. Your furniture looks like thrift store rejects until they discovered it's all vintage antiques. When my daughter Ashley rolled her eyes and said, "Dad, your furniture looks like thrift store rejects. No wonder we never bring friends over." I simply smiled and poured myself another cup of coffee. By the following weekend, I had sold 3 pieces for more money than she made in 6 months. And that was just the beginning. For 35 years, I had quietly built one of the most valuable private antique collections in the state. My children thought I was a broke old man living in the past, cluttering our family home with junk. They had no idea they were walking past museum-quality pieces worth hundreds of thousands of dollars every day. They thought they were dealing with their embarrassing, out-of-touch father. They were about to learn they'd been living in a gold mine their entire lives. Justice must be restored and arrogance punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. My name is Harold, and for the past 15 years since my wife Patricia passed away, I've been the perfect father. Maybe too perfect. When Ashley graduated college with massive student loans, I paid them off without her asking. When my son Brandon needed a down payment for his first house, I quietly transferred the money to his account. When their mother died, I kept the family home exactly as she left it, thinking it would comfort them. But comfort wasn't what they felt when they visited. "This place is like a museum, Dad," Ashley would complain during our monthly dinner visits. "All this old furniture and weird decorations everywhere. It's depressing." Brandon was worse. He'd walk through the house, shaking his head. "You need to get rid of this stuff and downsize. Get yourself a nice condo with modern furniture. Maybe then you'd actually have a social life." They both lived in pristine suburban homes with matching furniture sets from chain stores. Everything clean, white, and perfectly ordinary. They couldn't understand why I surrounded myself with what they saw as dusty relics. What they didn't know was that every dusty relic had a story. The mahogany dining table where we ate Sunday dinners, an 1880s Eastlake piece worth $25,000. The ugly old cabinet Ashley always bumped into, a genuine Stickley Arts and Crafts bookcase worth more than her car. I tried to share the history with them once. "This chair belonged to a railroad baron," I'd say, running my hand along the carved armrest. "The craftsmanship is incredible. Look at these joints." "Dad, it's just old," Brandon would reply. "Nobody wants old anymore." The breaking point came 3 months ago during Ashley's birthday dinner. She brought her new boyfriend, Troy, to meet the family. I spent the afternoon preparing Patricia's famous pot roast recipe, setting the table with our best china, genuine Haviland Limoges from 1892. Troy took one look around and whispered to Ashley, loud enough for me to hear, "Your dad's place looks like a hoarder house. How can you eat off dishes this old? Are you sure they're even clean?" Ashley giggled. "I know, right? Dad refuses to get rid of anything. He's like one of those people on TV who can't throw away newspapers." That's when Brandon joined in. We've tried talking to him about it. He just won't listen. "Honestly, Troy, we're worried he's developing some kind of mental problem. Normal people don't live like this." I stood in the doorway holding their plates, listening to my own children diagnose me as mentally ill because I appreciated beautiful craftsmanship and historical significance. "Maybe it's time for assisted living," Ashley said quietly. "Somewhere with activities and people his own age. He'd be happier, and we wouldn't have to worry about him living alone in this, whatever this is." I set their plates down gently and returned to the kitchen. They thought I was losing my mind. In reality, I was about to show them exactly how sharp it still was. The next morning, I was cleaning the dining room when Ashley's phone rang on the table. She'd left it behind in her hurry to escape my embarrassing home. I glanced at the screen. It was Brandon calling. The phone had one of those auto-answer features for family calls. Before I could figure out how to decline it, Brandon's voice filled the room. "Ash, thank God you picked up. I've been thinking about last night." "This isn't Ashley," I started to say, but Brandon kept talking. "That place is getting worse. Did you see how he was hovering over us? And the way he talks about that furniture like it's precious art or something. It's not normal behavior." I stood frozen, holding the phone. "I did some research," Brandon continued. There are companies that specialize in estate cleanouts for elderly people with hoarding problems. They come in, sort everything, donate the usable stuff, and haul away the junk. We could have that house cleared out in a weekend. My hand tightened on the phone. The best part is, once it's empty, we can stage it with some modern furniture and put on the market. That neighborhood has been gentrifying. We could probably get $400,000 for it. Easy. Split 3 ways after Dad's care costs. That's still a nice chunk of change for both of us. The room started spinning. They weren't just embarrassed by my home. They were planning to steal it. I found this place called Sunset Manor, Brandon went on. It's only 40 minutes from both of us, and they have a memory care unit for when he gets worse. The sooner we move him, the easier it'll be. He's already talking to furniture. That's definitely early-stage dementia. I carefully ended the call and sat down hard in Patricia's favorite reading chair. A genuine Louis XVI Bergerac worth $38,000 that my children thought was tacky old junk. They thought I was losing my mind because I treasured beautiful things. They planned to throw away a lifetime of careful collecting and use the profits to lock me away. But they had made one crucial mistake. They assumed I was just a sentimental old man who didn't understand the modern world. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 40 years as an insurance adjuster specializing in art and antiques fraud. I knew the value of every single piece in my home down to the last penny. More importantly, I knew exactly how to prove it. That afternoon, I made a phone call I should have made years earlier. Peterson Appraisal Services, this is Nancy speaking. Nancy, this is Harold Mitchum. I need a comprehensive home assessment for insurance purposes. Nancy's voice brightened. Harold, it's been what, 5 years since you retired? I heard you've been building quite the personal collection. Something like that. How soon can you get someone out here? For you? Tomorrow morning. I'll send our senior appraiser. The next day, Charles Whitman arrived with his camera, measuring tools, and authentication equipment. Charles had worked with me for 15 years on fraud cases. He knew quality when he saw it. Harold, my friend, he said, running his hand along my Chippendale secretary desk, this is museum-quality work. Where on earth did you find it? Estate sale in Williamsburg, 1987. The family had no idea what they were selling. For 6 hours, Charles methodically cataloged every piece in my home. The Victorian settee in the living room, $12,000. The collection of Rookwood pottery on the mantel, $8,000. The Persian rug my children had complained about for years because it was too fancy for everyday use. $15,000. By evening, Charles sat at my kitchen table, a genuine farmhouse piece from 1850 worth $4,000, totaling his assessment. Harold, I hope your insurance is up to date. You're sitting on just over $450,000 in authenticated antiques and collectibles. I poured him a scotch from a crystal decanter that cost more than most people's monthly salary. What would you estimate for a quick estate sale? If someone needed to liquidate everything fast? Charles grimaced. Estate sale companies typically price at 30 to 40% of retail value for quick turnover. You'd be looking at maybe $150,000, assuming they even recognized what they were selling. More likely, they'd price everything as generic old furniture, and you'd get $50,000 if you were lucky. And if someone donated it all to charity? Harold, what are you thinking? Charles looked concerned. You could claim maybe $75,000 as a tax deduction, but you'd be giving away nearly $500,000 worth of beautiful pieces. I smiled. Just planning ahead, my friend. That night, I sat in my study and opened a new file folder. Inside, I placed Charles's official appraisal, the authentication certificates for my most valuable pieces, and the purchase receipts I'd meticulously kept for 35 years. Then I picked up the phone and called my attorney. Well, Harold Mitchum. To what do I owe the pleasure? Walter Kane had been handling my legal affairs since Patricia died. He was old school, the kind of lawyer who wore 3-piece suits and still used fountain pens. More importantly, he understood the value of patience and planning. Walter, I need to update my will, and I need to do it in a way that protects my assets from premature liquidation. Are the children getting eager? I told them about the phone call, their plans for estate clean-out companies, and their belief that I was developing dementia. Walter was quiet for a long moment. Harold, what you're describing could constitute elder abuse under state law. If they're planning to declare you incompetent to gain control of your assets. I'm not interested in criminal charges, Walter. I want something more educational. Over the next 2 hours, we crafted a strategy that would accomplish two things: protect my assets and teach my children a lesson about assumptions. First, we established a revocable trust with Walter's firm as trustees. The trust would take immediate ownership of my home and all contents, with me retaining lifetime occupancy rights. This meant no one could force a sale or clean out without going through Walter's office. Second, we created what Walter called educational provisions in my will. My children would inherit everything, but only after they completed certain requirements designed to teach them the value of what they'd been dismissing. The beauty of this approach, Walter explained, is that it's completely legal and actually quite generous. You're giving them everything they want, just not the way they expected to get it. But the real masterstroke was Walter's suggestion for immediate protection. Harold, as your attorney, I'm obligated to inform you that if anyone attempts to have you declared incompetent or tries to force you into assisted living against your will, there are legal remedies available, particularly if they're planning to profit from the arrangement. He pulled out a standard form. I'm going to recommend you complete this cognitive assessment and file it with the county clerk's office. It's a legal document stating your current mental competency. If anyone challenges your decision-making abilities later, we'll have professional documentation of your mental state. The cognitive assessment was laughably easy. Basic questions about current events, simple math, memory tests. I scored in the 95th percentile for my age group. There's one more thing, Walter, I said as we finished the paperwork. I want to make a significant charitable donation, but I want to do it publicly, and I want my children to be there when it happens. Walter raised an eyebrow. How significant? $52,000 to the local historical society. Harold, that's quite generous. Are you sure you want to part with that much? I smiled. Walter, what they don't know is that the piece I'm donating is worth $90,000. The Historical Society is getting a bargain. I'm getting a substantial tax deduction, and my children are about to learn their first lesson about making assumptions. What they didn't know was that their crazy old father had been 3 steps ahead of them from the moment they started planning my future. The next weekend, I invited both children over for what I called a family discussion about the future. Ashley arrived first, looking pleased. Dad, I'm so glad you're finally ready to talk about making some changes. Brandon and I have been worried about you. I know you have, sweetheart. That's why I wanted to share some exciting news with you. Brandon walked in carrying a stack of assisted living brochures. Dad, I brought some information about some really nice places. This one has a golf course and everything. That's thoughtful, son, but I have some other plans I want to discuss first. I led them into the living room and sat down in my Louis XVI Bergera. Ashley and Brandon exchanged glances. I could see them thinking this was the conversation where I finally admitted I needed help. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what you both said last week. I began about how my furniture and decorations are just old junk taking up space. Dad, we didn't mean dash, Ashley started. No, you were absolutely right. It's time I started giving some of this stuff away to people who might actually appreciate it. Brandon leaned forward eagerly. That's great, Dad. There are companies that can handle everything. You won't have to worry about dash. Actually, I've already started. Yesterday, I made my first donation. I pulled out a photograph of the Tiffany lamp I'd donated to the Historical Society. It had sat on my bedside table for 20 years. A beautiful piece with a bronze base and stained glass shade featuring dragonflies. This old lamp was just collecting dust, so I gave it to the Historical Society. They seemed quite excited about it. Ashley looked at the photo dismissively. That's nice, Dad. It's good to see you letting go of some of the clutter. They were so excited, in fact, that they're having a little ceremony next Saturday to thank me. I'd love for you both to come. They're calling it a major acquisition for their collection. Brandon checked his phone. Sure, Dad, if it's important to you. Oh, it is. You see, it also gave me this lovely thank you letter. I handed Brandon the letter from the Historical Society's director. He glanced at it quickly, then stopped and read it again more carefully. Dad, this says you donated a 19th century Tiffany Studios lamp valued at $50,000 for tax purposes. Ashley grabbed the letter. That can't be right. That was just some old lamp from your bedroom. Actually, it's a 1905 Tiffany Dragonfly lamp. I bought it at an estate sale in 1992 for $800. The owners thought it was a reproduction. The room went very quiet. $50,000. Ashley's voice was barely a whisper. Well, that's the conservative estimate for tax purposes. Charles Whitman thinks it could have brought 70 or 80,000 at auction. But I'm happy it's going somewhere people will appreciate it. Brandon was staring at the letter like it might change if he looked at it hard enough. Dad, are you saying that lamp was actually valuable? Oh yes, quite valuable, along with, well, most of the other pieces you've been encouraging me to get rid of. I stood up and walked over to the ugly old cabinet Ashley always complained about. Take this bookcase, for example. Ashley, you've bumped into it probably 1,000 times over the years. It's too big for that corner, Dad. It makes the room look crowded. It's a Gustav Stickley Arts and Crafts bookcase from 1905. Do you know who Gustav Stickley was? They both shook their heads. He was one of the most important furniture makers in American history. This piece is worth about $28,000. Ashley sat down hard on the Victorian settee. $28,000? For that bookcase. And the sofa you're sitting on is an 1880s Victorian piece worth about $12,000. Brandon was looking around the room with new eyes. Dad, how do you know all this? Because I spent 40 years as an insurance adjuster specializing in antiques and art fraud. I know the value of everything in this house down to the last penny. The silence stretched on for a full minute. Finally, Ashley spoke. Dad, when you said you were giving things away, oh, I'm just getting started. Next week, I'm donating the dining room set to the art museum. The appraiser thinks it's worth about $40,000, but again, I'm happy to see it appreciated. Brandon's face had gone pale. The dining room set? Where we eat Sunday dinner. That's the one. Unless, of course, you'd like to join me for dinner there this Sunday. It might be our last chance to eat at a genuine Eastlake table. They both stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Dad, Ashley said carefully, maybe we should talk about this donation plan of yours. The Historical Society ceremony was held the following Saturday at their downtown gallery. Ashley and Brandon arrived, looking uncomfortable in their best clothes, clearly unsure what to expect. The gallery was packed. Local collectors, museum board members, university professors, and half the town's social elite had turned out for the event. I spotted several reporters from a newspaper and the local arts magazine. Harold, the director, Eleanor Blackwood, swept over to greet us. I can't thank you enough for this incredible donation. The Tiffany lamp is already our most popular display piece. She led us over to where my former bedside lamp now sat in a custom display case with professional lighting and a detailed information plaque. Tiffany Studios Dragonfly lamp, circa 1905, Brandon read aloud. On loan from the private collection of Harold Mitchum. Estimated value, $65,000 to $85,000. Ashley's jaw dropped. They updated the estimate? Eleanor beamed. Oh yes, once our conservation team examined it more closely, we realized it was even rarer than we first thought. The bronze patina is completely original, and the glass work is exceptional. This is definitely one of Louis Tiffany's better pieces. A photographer from the newspaper approached. Mr. Mitchum, could we get a photo of you with your donation for tomorrow's art section? As I posed next to the lamp, I heard Ashley whisper to Brandon, how do we not know? We walked past that lamp every time we visited. The real shock came during Eleanor's speech to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about our donor, Harold Mitchum. Harold spent 4 decades as one of the region's most respected insurance adjusters, specializing in fine art and antiques. His expertise helped solve dozens of fraud cases and recover millions of dollars in stolen artwork. The crowd applauded politely. But what makes today's donation so special is that Harold has one of the finest private collections of American antiques I've ever seen. His knowledge and eye for quality are truly exceptional. More applause, louder this time. In fact, Harold, I have to ask, Would you consider loaning us a few more pieces for our upcoming exhibition on American decorative arts? I know our visitors would love to see more examples from your collection." The room went silent, waiting for my answer. "Well, Eleanor, that's very flattering, but I'm actually in the process of downsizing. My children think I have too much clutter." A few people chuckled sympathetically. Of course, if they change their minds about the value of preserving these pieces, I'd be happy to discuss it. After the ceremony, we were surrounded by people wanting to talk about antiques and collecting. Professor Williams from the university's art history department shook my hand enthusiastically. "Harold, I had no idea you were local. I've been teaching about the arts and crafts movement for 20 years. I'd love to see some of your stickly pieces if you'd ever consider having students over for a study session." Dr. Patricia Holbrook from a museum board joined the conversation. "Harold, we're always looking for guest lecturers who can speak about authentication and collecting. Your background in fraud investigation would be fascinating to our members." Ashley and Brandon stood off to the side, looking increasingly bewildered as person after person treated their embarrassing father like some kind of expert. The final moment came as we were leaving. Eleanor pulled me aside and spoke quietly, but not so quietly that my children couldn't hear. "Harold, I hope you'll reconsider about donating more pieces. Between you and me, a collection like yours belongs in a museum setting where people can appreciate it properly. It would be such a shame to see it end up in the hands of people who don't understand its significance." In the car afterward, neither Ashley nor Brandon said a word for the first 10 minutes. Finally, Ashley spoke. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell us?" "Tell you what, sweetheart? That you know all this stuff. That you're actually famous in the antiques world." I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I tried to tell you about the pieces many times. You said they were just old junk." Brandon shifted uncomfortably. "We had no idea they were actually valuable. Brandon, when you were 12, I tried to show you how to identify different types of wood joints on that stickly bookcase. Do you remember what you said?" He was quiet. "You said, 'Dad, nobody cares about old wood.' When Ashley was 16, I offered to teach her about pottery marks and glazing techniques. She told me it was boring. We were just kids then," Ashley protested. "Last month you were adults when you call my interests a mental health problem." The car fell silent again. "Dad," Brandon said eventually, "about those assisted living brochures. What about them? Maybe we were being a little hasty." I smiled in the dark. "Maybe you were." Monday morning, my phone started ringing. Word about the ceremony had spread through the local collector community, and suddenly everyone wanted to know more about Harold Mitchum's collection. The first call was from Pemberton Auction House in the state capital. "Mr. Mitchum, I'm calling about your Tiffany donation. We specialize in American decorative arts, and I wondered if you might be interested in consigning some pieces for our fall auction." "What kind of numbers are we talking about?" "Well, based on the photos in the newspaper, I'd estimate your collection could bring anywhere from 400 to 600,000 at auction, depending on what else you have." I thanked him politely and made notes. The second call was from a private collector in Charleston who'd heard about the ceremony through mutual contacts. "Harold, I've been looking for a good stickly bookcase for years. If you ever decide to sell." By noon, I'd received offers totaling over $200,000 for individual pieces. That afternoon, Ashley called. "Dad, I keep thinking about Saturday night. All those people who knew you. I feel terrible that we didn't know." "I appreciate that, Ashley. Can I ask you something? When you said you were donating the dining room set, were you serious?" I could hear the anxiety in her voice. "Why do you ask?" "Well, Brandon and I were talking, and we realized we might have been insensitive about your interests. Maybe we should learn more about these pieces before you give them all away." "That's very thoughtful of you. So maybe you could hold off on the donations for a while, just until we can appreciate them properly." I smiled. "Actually, Ashley, I've been thinking about that myself. Walter Kane and I had a very interesting conversation about the best way to preserve the collection." "Walter Kane, my attorney. You remember him from your mother's funeral. Why were you talking to your attorney about furniture?" "Well, it turns out that when you own nearly $500,000 worth of antiques, there are some legal considerations to think about." The phone went quiet. $500,000? That's the conservative estimate. Walter suggested I might want to put everything in a trust to protect it from premature disposition. What does that mean? It means no one can force me to sell or donate anything without going through proper legal channels. It also means if anyone tries to have me declare incompetent to gain control of my assets, there will be complications. Another long silence. Dad, you know about the phone call? I know about several phone calls, Ashley, and the assisted living brochures, and the estate clean-out companies. We weren't trying to steal from you, weren't you? You were planning to throw away nearly $500,000 worth of antiques and use the proceeds to put me in a home against my will. We thought it was all worthless. You thought I was worthless. There's a difference. I could hear her crying softly. Ashley, I want you to understand something. Everything in this house will be yours and Brandon's someday. But first, you need to prove you're capable of appreciating what you're inheriting. What do you mean? Walter and I have created some educational requirements. Before you can inherit, you'll need to complete a certification program in antiques appraisal and American decorative art history. You're making us go to school. I'm making you learn the value of what you've been dismissing as junk. The program takes 6 months. Once you complete it, everything is yours. And if we don't complete it, then everything goes to the Historical Society and the Art Museum. They clearly appreciate it. Dad, that's not fair. Ashley, fair would be calling Elder Protective Services about your plans to defraud me. Fair would be letting the newspaper know that my own children try to have me committed so they could steal my antiques. Fair would be pressing charges for attempted elder abuse. The crying stopped. Instead, I'm giving you a chance to learn something valuable and inherit a collection worth more than most people's retirement funds. I'd say that's remarkably generous. That evening, Brandon called. Dad, Ashley told me about the trust and the requirements. And when does the program start? 3 weeks later, Ashley and Brandon came over for Sunday dinner. They'd both enrolled in the antique certification program at the community college and were 2 weeks into their coursework. The change in their behavior was remarkable. Instead of rushing through dinner and leaving quickly, they lingered at the table asking questions about the Eastlake period and learning to identify different types of wood grain. Dad, Ashley said, running her hand along the table's carved edge. Professor Martinez showed us slides of Eastlake furniture in class. I can't believe we ate at this table our whole lives without knowing what it was. She made us write an essay about the difference between machine carving and hand carving, Brandon added. I kept thinking about this table the whole time. After dinner, we moved to the living room for coffee. Ashley sat carefully on the Victorian settee, no longer flopping down carelessly like she used to. Dad, can I ask you something? She said. When you heard that phone call, how did you feel? I set down my coffee cup and considered the question. Betrayed, disappointed, angry, certainly, but mostly sad. Sad. Ashley, you and Brandon spent your childhoods in this house. Your mother and I chose every piece carefully. We'd take you to auctions and estate sales, trying to share our love of beautiful things with you. Brandon looked uncomfortable. I remember those trips. We always complained about them. You did, and eventually we stopped taking you. But we never stopped hoping that someday you'd understand what we were trying to show you. The history, Ashley said quietly. The history, the craftsmanship, the connection to people who lived before us and cared about creating beautiful, lasting things. I stood up and walked over to the Stickley bookcase. This bookcase was made in 1905 by craftsmen who took pride in their work. It survived 4 different owners, 2 world wars, the Depression, and countless moves. It's solid and beautiful and built to last another century. I turned back to my children. Your mother and I wanted to leave you something more meaningful than just money in a bank account. We want to leave you a legacy of appreciation for quality and beauty and history. Ashley started crying again, but quietly this time. Instead, you saw it all as an embarrassment. Old junk cluttering up your inheritance. We were wrong, Brandon said simply. Yes, you were. But wrong can be fixed. Ignorance can be cured with education. What hurt me most wasn't that you didn't know the value of these pieces. It was that you didn't think I was worth listening to when I tried to teach you. Dad, we're sorry, Ashley said. Really, truly sorry. I know you are. That's why you're both sitting in that classroom twice a week, learning about something you used to mock. The other students think we're crazy, Brandon admitted. Two middle-aged people taking Antiques 101. What do you tell them? The truth. That our father is an expert and we were too stubborn to learn from him when we had the chance. I sat back down on my Bergera and looked at my children, really looked at them, for the first time in months. There's something else I want you to understand. This collection represents 35 years of careful research, patient hunting, and shrewd buying. Your mother and I didn't get lucky at garage sales. We studied, we learned, we developed relationships with dealers and other collectors. Like a real profession, Ashley said. Exactly like a real profession. When you graduate from that program, you'll know enough to appreciate what you're inheriting. More importantly, you'll know enough to continue building the collection instead of just liquidating it. Continue building it? Ashley, there are pieces I've been watching for years, waiting for them to come on the market. Dealers call me when something special becomes available. That network, that knowledge, that reputation, those are as valuable as any individual antique. Brandon leaned forward. You mean we could actually add to the collection? If you want to. If you develop a genuine appreciation for it. If you learn to see beauty and history instead of just dollar signs. What if we don't? Ashley asked. What if we complete the program, but decide we'd rather sell everything and split the money? I smiled. Then you sell everything and split the money. Once you inherit, it's yours to do with as you choose. But I have a feeling that once you really understand what you're looking at, selling it will be the last thing on your mind. The room fell quiet except for the ticking of the mantel clock, a Chelsea ship's bell clock from 1920 worth $3,000. Dad, Brandon said eventually, can we start over? What do you mean? Can you show us around the house again? Like you used to when we were kids, except this time we promised to actually listen. I stood up and smiled. I like that very much. 6 months later, Ashley and Brandon both passed their certification program with honors. Ashley wrote her final project on American arts and crafts furniture, focusing specifically on the Stickley workshop techniques. Brandon chose to research the history of Tiffany Studios and spent weeks examining my lamp collection with new appreciation. The day they graduated, I hosted a celebration dinner at the house. But this time, instead of rushing through the meal, we spent 3 hours at the table talking about provenance and craftsmanship and the stories behind each piece. Dad, Ashley said as we finished dessert, I owe you an apology beyond just saying I'm sorry. Oh, I spent 20 years thinking you were living in the past, surrounded by old things because you couldn't accept that Mom was gone. But that wasn't at all, was it? What do you think it was? I think you were surrounded by beautiful things because you and Mom had learned to see beauty where other people saw only age. And I think keeping the house exactly as she left it wasn't about being stuck in the past. It was about honoring the life you built together. I felt my eyes getting misty. Your mother would be proud of both of you. She always said you'd come around eventually. Brandon stood up and walked over to examine the Chippendale secretary desk where Patricia used to pay bills and write letters. Dad, Ashley and I have been talking. We don't want to split up the collection when we inherit it. No, we want to keep it together. Maybe add to it, like you said. We thought maybe we could take turns hosting it. A few years at my house, then Ashley's, then back to you. Ashley nodded enthusiastically. That way it stays in the family, but we all get to enjoy it. And maybe someday our kids will appreciate it too. And if they don't, I asked, then we'll make them take the certification course. Ashley grinned. These days, my phone rings with different kind of calls. Instead of assisted living brochures, I get invitations to speak at collector meetings and university classes. Instead of estate clean-out companies, antique dealers call with first offers on exceptional pieces. Ashley stops by twice a week now, not because she feels obligated, but because she genuinely enjoys learning about new acquisitions and hearing stories about pieces we've owned for years. Brandon brings his teenage son over on weekends to help with household projects and learn about furniture restoration. Last month, young Tommy helped me strip and refinish a 1920s radio cabinet we found at an estate sale. The local historical society appointed me to their board of directors, and the art museum frequently asks me to authentication pieces for their collection. But the best part is Sunday dinners. We still eat at the Eastlake table, still use Patricia's Haviland china, still light the room with Tiffany lamps. The difference is that now my children see what Patricia and I always saw. Not old junk cluttering up the house, but beautiful objects with rich histories, surrounded by family who finally understands their value. Sometimes I catch Ashley running her hand along the carved edge of the dining table, the same way I taught her mother to do 35 years ago. Sometimes I watch Brandon explaining mortise and tenon joints to his son, using the same words I once used with him. They thought they were dealing with an old man who couldn't tell the difference between trash and treasure. Instead, they learned the difference themselves, and that education was worth more than all the antiques in the house combined.
If this story got you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that hit deep, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And hey, if you know someone who needs to hear this one, share it with them. Thanks for watching.